Hello everyone, thank you all for watching. My name is Chen Cong from South China University of Technology. This work is a joint work with Professor Xu Yingfeng from Xi'an Jiaotong University. In this work, we focus on how different levels of players' rationality impact the outcomes of sequential scheduling games. We find some very interesting results which show that a lower level of rationality of players may lead to a better equilibrium. So the title of this speech is called The Curves of Rationality in Sequential Scheduling Games. First, I will give some toy examples to show what a sequential scheduling game is. Imagine there are two identical machines and two users. Each user has a task to be processed by one of these machines and want his task to be finished as early as possible. In a sequential game, the two users will choose machines sequentially, so the equilibrium will be the user 1 chooses one machine and user 2 chooses another machine. Because if the two users chose the same machine, then the conjunction would delay the processing. Next, we consider a three-player game. In this game, the three players have different processing times, and the individual cost of each user is the load of the chosen machine, where the load of the machine is the total processing time of the job processed on it. That is to say, if two users chose the same machine, the cost would be the sum of their processing times for both of them. So next, let's see how this game would be played. For the first player, it has no difference in the two machines. So we suppose he chooses machine 1. And when the second player makes decision, he will do a little calculation. If he chooses machine 2, then machine 2 has a smaller load than machine 1, so the last player will also choose machine 2. In this case, the cost of the second player would be 0.9 plus 2, that is 2.9. Okay, but if the second player chooses machine 1, then of course the last player will choose machine 2. So in this case, the cost of player 1 would be 1 plus 0.9. So the cost is 1.9. It's smaller than 2.9. This equilibrium would be player 1 and player 2 chooses machine 1 and player 3 chooses machine 2. Okay, in this third example, we show a more complex scheduling model called unrelated machines. In this model, each job has different processing time on different machines. This example will show that it is more complex to calculate an equilibrium. To avoid breaking ties, we add some small values on the processing times. Note that in this game, each player knows all the information of other players and believe other player will make rational decisions just like him. For example, when player 1 makes decision, he will take the behaviors of the following players into account. Therefore, in a sequential game, it is standard to draw a game tree and conduct backward induction to find the equilibrium. So the whole process would be like this. First, we draw a game tree to list all the possible cases. Then we calculate the cost for each player on each node. For example, the first nodes represent all the players' choices machine 1. In this case, the load of machine 1 is the sum of the process times. So it's roughly 3. So all these three players have a cost of 3. For the second node, the first two players chooses machine 1 and the last player chooses machine 2. So the load of the first machine will be around 1, and the load of the machine 2 is also 1. So the cost of the first two players will be 1 plus epsilon, and the cost of the last player will be 1. Follow this procedure, we can have all the cost for every node. And depending on the cost, we can conduct backward induction. First, determine the action of the last player, say player 3. For example, let's say the first subgame where job 1 and 2 both chose machine 1. The cost of the job 3 for choosing machine 1 is 3, while the cost is 1 for choosing machine 2. So in this subgame, the player 3 will choose the second machine. Similarly, job 3 will choose machine 1 in the second subgame, and so on. Then we can move forward to the second last job, say job 2. For this subgame, since the decision of job 3 is known, we know that the cost for job 2 is choose machine 1. To choose machine 1 is 1 plus epsilon, and the cost to choose machine 2 is 1. So job 2 will choose machine 2 in this subgame. So in this way, we can finally decide the best choice for job 1 and find the subgame perfect equilibrium. Now we give the formal definition for the sequential scheduling game. There are n jobs as players and m machines as strategies. Each job G has a processing time Pig on machine I. The self-interest jobs will sequentially choose one of the machines for processing, and the individual cost of each job is defined as the load of the choosing machine, where the load of the machine means the total processing times of the jobs processed on it. Also, the players are assumed to be farsighted, meaning when a job makes decision, he knows the choices made by his predecessors as well as the processing times of his successors. At last, we would like to mention that the game always processes subgame perfect equilibrium, SPE for short, which can be calculated by backward induction. Now let me introduce the motivation of this work. Recall that this example we gave before. Here we consider the computational ability needed for players to make an optimal decision. For 2 machines and 3 jobs, the first job will need to compute the cost for 2 to the power of 3, that is 8 leaves, 8 nodes. While for the m machines and n jobs, the number will be m to the power of n. Leaves need to be calculated. Indeed, research shows that computing a subgame perfect equilibrium for unrelated machine scheduling game is p-space complete. That is almost impossible for a player to do such a complex computation to find an optimal decision. And on the other hand, it is very likely for some player to divide from the SPE solution. Let's say this example, we remove the small value terms to make it more obvious. If we observe the SPE, we will find that the first player chooses a machine with a large processing time, rather than choose the machine with a 0 processing time. So intuitively, the first job might prefer the 0 processing time to some degree, that we believe. So depending on these 2 reasons, it seems reasonable to reconsider the common assumption that all players have unlimited computational capacity, or we call it full rationality. Then let's see also the efficiency of the equilibrium. In the equilibrium, the load of the machine 1 is 3 and the load of machine 2 is 2, so the maximum load is 3. The maximum load is also called the mix span. However, we can see that the other solution has have the mix span of 1, which is the minimum possible solution. So in the view of a social cost, the mix span, the SPE is rather bad in this example. Actually, we usually use the price of anarchy to show the efficiency of equilibrium for a game. The price of anarchy is defined as the worst social cost of a Nash equilibrium divided by the optimal social cost. In other words, the POA basically tells that how bad could it be if allowing the jobs to play strategically. As the price of anarchy is built for Nash equilibrium, the notation is also extended to sequential games called sequential price of anarchy. That is the worst social cost of a subgame perfect equilibrium divided by the social optimal. In this example, we can see the sequential price of anarchy is 3 for this example. For the general version of scheduling game, where there are n machines and n jobs, the arbitrary processing times. Research first showed that the sequential price of anarchy is between n and m times 2 to the power of n. Later, the results are improved as follows. As one can see, the SPOA is extremely large, meaning that the equilibrium is very bad in the scheduling game. Recently, a study shows that even for 2 unrelated machines, the sequential price of anarchy is already very bad. It grows linearly with n. However, on the other hand, the online greedy algorithm for 2 unrelated machines will output a rather good solution. This indicates that if the players are ametic, that is, they ignore the following players when they make decision, the SPOA will be 2. On the contrary, when the players have full rationality, the SPOA grows linearly with the number of players n. Due to the huge gap between full rationality and we call zero rationality, we call this phenomenon the curse of rationality. Our work mainly investigates the impact of different levels of rationality on the SPOA for the unrelated machines scheduling game. First, we have to model the different levels of rationality. Simon defines the bounded rationality as rational choice that takes account the cognitive limitations of the decision maker, limitations of both knowledge and computational capacity. And Frank Hahn remarks that there is only one way to be perfectly rational, while there are an infinity of ways to be partial rational. So in this work, we propose 2 ways to model the bounded rationality of players. The first one is players with k lookahead, in which each player only considers the next k successors information for computing his decision. For example, in the previous case, when each player has 1 lookahead, the game will play as follows. Job 1 will know the information of job 2 and consider it as a last job. So job 1 will draw a 2-level game tree instead of 3-level and conduct backward induction and finally chooses machine 1. After job 1's decision, job 2 will also draw a 2-level game tree and find his optimal choice. The final equilibrium is like this. And the sequential price of anarchy is around 2. Note that similar settings, similar setting with the key lookahead, can also be found in these literatures. The second model is called simple-minded players. A simple-minded player is simply assumes the successors will choose the machines with minimum processing times. For example, when the job 1 makes decision, he will assume job 2 will choose the smaller processing time, that is machine 1, and job 3 would also choose the smaller processing time on machine 2. So job 1 can easily find the best choice. Then when job 2 makes decision, he will also assume job 3 chooses machine 2 and find his best choice. Finally, the equilibrium has a sequential price affinity of 1, which is also the optimal solution. Recall that for this particular example, the sequential price affinity for full rationality is 3, and for one look ahead is 2, and for these simple-minded players is 1. It seems like that the bounded rationality is indeed better than the full rationality. In this part, we analyze the sequential price affinity for one look-ahead model on 2 unrelated machines as a warm-up. We first give the main lemma, saying that the mixed span is no larger than the sum of total minimum processing time. By this lemma and the trivial lower bound for the opt, we can obtain the following theorem, that the SPOA is equal to 2. The proof is actually quite simple. The upper bound is just obtained by the lemma and the bound for the opt, where the lower bound can be obtained from the simple case. Now the problem is how to prove the main lemma. The idea is to divide the jobs into certain groups, and each group satisfies some conditions. Let's take one group as an example. The group contains jobs from U plus 1 to V, and in there, D1U is the load of machine 1 caused by the first U jobs, and D2U is the load of machine 2 caused by the first U jobs. So the group satisfies the following conditions. Basically, the schedule of the group is like this. Before the jobs chosen machines, there are initial load D1 and D2 on each machine. Then job U plus 1 to V minus 1 chose machine 2. And the last job V, last job in the group, job V chooses machine 1. So we capture this group of jobs, and we will show that the mixed span created by the jobs from U plus 1 to V is at most the sum of minimum processing times of these jobs. After proving this property for each group, we combine all groups together, and we can see the lemma is true. Next, we consider the general case, the k look-ahead model on M machines. For this case, we also give a k lemma. In this lemma, delta L of k L to n means the maximum mixed span the jobs L to n can create. So the delta L plus 1 to n is the maximum mixed span the jobs from I plus 1 to n can create. So the difference between these two terms means the maximum mixed span created by job L actually. So the lemma says that the mixed span created by job L is no larger than a certain value, and the value is the minimum process time of job L plus delta L of k. So here the delta L of k means the mixed-span created by the jobs in KL. KL is the job from L to L plus K. So by this lemma, we can obtain the final mixed-span. It's no larger than this term. So delta L from 1 to n means all the job, the mixed-span created by all the jobs. So this inequality implies that the mixed-span is no larger than this term. So this term is the sum of the minimum process times plus the sum of delta LKG. As to the delta LK, actually, because each user has k lookheads, so there are only k plus 1 jobs in the k. So delta LK is actually corresponds to the case k players with full rationality. So as to the delta L of k, we can borrow upper bounds from previous work regarding the full rationality setting. And here we have the following theory. The price of energy for two unrelated machines is big O k square, while for m machines, the sequential price of energy is big O 2 to the power of k times the minimum of m times k and n. For the simple-minded players model, we show that the SPOA is exactly m. The proofs is quite simple, so I just skip this part. Here is the upper bound for the SPOA, and here's the lower bound for the SPOA. At last, we give a summary of the results of this work. For the k look-ahead model, the 0 look-ahead corresponds to the unrelated, and the n look-ahead corresponds to the full rationality. Our results lies in between these cases. In particular, the 0 look-ahead and the 1 look-ahead have the same performance for the two machines case, and for constant k and m, the sequential price of energy for k look-ahead model is constant, while the SPOA for full rationality model is unbounded. For the simple-minded players model, the sequential price of energy is m for m machines, which is as good as the unrelated. So the main contribution of this work is the reconsideration of perfect rationality assumption for the players. We propose two models to capture the bounded rationality and prove that, indeed, a lower level of rationality of players may lead to a better equilibrium. Regarding future work, one can improve the bound for the SPOA for k look-ahead model, and another direction is to study the bounded rationality in other games to further understand the role that the rationality plays in the games. So that's all. Thank you very much for listening.